with parents. They seem to be in such a major... Hi, and welcome to the WMAR podcast. I'm Erica Kane. Today's guest, you might have seen at the Digital Summit. You might have seen her at South by Southwest, Tech Inclusion, or Wonder Woman Tech. She is the first Black Pulitzer Prize winner for VR, virtual reality. Very exciting. And her feats have already impacted the lives of over 5,000 individuals through live and virtual events in the Metaverse. So let's talk about it. Please welcome Bianca J. Jackson.
Hi, Erica. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I am. I can't even go into the list, okay, of things that you've done, but we're going to attempt to, because I think it's important to let everybody in on everything that you've been doing. Mm-hmm. And you're based here in Baltimore, and how you've just been representing Baltimore and making Baltimore proud. So let's talk about it. You're the genius behind Brick Rose Exchange, a groundbreaking virtual reality event technology company. So tell us about the birth of Brick Rose.
Oh, man, like, where do I even start?
Right, because it's just been going for a while.
It's been going for a while, but I think the real interesting thing is that we didn't actually start off as a tech company. We actually started off as an event space 8 months before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so when it happened, it was just like, okay, we got a foot traffic business with no foot traffic. Like, what do you do with that?
Okay.
And so I spent, I want to say, 10 plus years working for different really big companies in the Washington, D.C. area. And I just went back to tech, went back to emerging tech, went back to virtual reality as a way of saving the business. And so like many business owners, especially Black business owners, having to think through that pivot through the pandemic was either the point of either your business survived or it didn't. Mm-hmm. And so we made a decision to pivot, and it was wildly successful. So that's literally like the restart or the jump off point for us. And now we're able to not only just work with people in Baltimore City, but literally people all around the world. So I'm just excited about what we've been able to do in the middle of adversity, mm-hmm. but then also how we help out the community of just even upskilling them in the technology. So our business has like two sides of it, right? Like the side we make money, and then the side that we have to give back to the community.
Okay. And tell us exactly and specifically how Brick Rose is tied to VR and the Metaverse.
Sure. So like VR, think about virtual reality as just technology, right? So most people, the simplest way to understand it is like video game technology. So you've seen video games, you've probably played them, you probably got a kid that won't get off one. And so we use that type of technology to have people meet from anywhere they are in the world to meet each other. So mm-hmm. they come in as digital characters. So if you want to dress up as a panda, a ninja, a cheerleader, you can. But it's a really great place where people feel seen, they feel heard, they feel like they belong, they feel like they can connect, right? Mm-hmm. And so, for example, we did a project with Coinbase. So Coinbase is one of the world's biggest cryptocurrency platforms, where we were able to bring their employees together from Ireland, Manila, so the Philippines and the United States, and they all came together for a virtual dance mm-hmm. party, right? Mm-hmm. And
okay.
So how cool is it to be able to meet your global coworkers, but then also come as you are, come however you want to be, and enjoy music from all these different countries? But what was really cool about that event is Beyonce and Rihanna were definitely the rock stars of that party, no matter where they were around the world. So
wow.
Yeah.
Definitely a smart way to pivot, because like you said, during the pandemic, physically it wasn't happening.
Correct.
So you had to find a way for it to happen. When people hear terms like AI, crypto, metaverse, they're just like, Yeah. I mean, there are people that dive right in, and they're like, listen, I'm going to get ahead of the fray, and I'm going to get on top of this. Yep. There are people that it just sparks their interest immediately. And then there are some mm-hmm. people that are just like, leave me back here. Yeah. So according to you exactly, what is the Metaverse?
Oh, that's a really great question. I would say, to physically describe it for people or visually describe it for people, it's a digital place where you can meet. Literally, it's another kind of like a parallel, I want to say universe, but a parallel place that you can go meet people. You can go and buy things, exchange in commerce, exchange in conversation. It's literally somewhere online. Like for all those people who are in chat rooms meeting people from all over the world, mm-hmm. is that plus an actual physical space that you can go into and also have a digital character that represents you, right? And so I think that's probably the simplest way for most people to understand it.
Okay.
But the metaverse kind of connects all these different technologies together. That's just kind of like one layer, but it's probably the simplest layer for most people to understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the old school folks that are not so quick to jump in, what are some reasons that they should tap into and explore the metaverse?
Let me tell you something. Let's talk about AI specifically because it's one of the technologies that's tied to this. And I think what we're starting to see, especially with AI, we've never seen anything move this fast, right? And so when you start talking about tools, most people are using ChatGPT. This tool is about a year old. Already, it has 180 million users around the world. This is the fastest growing tool ever.
Yeah.
Right? And so I say that because no matter how old you are, you should at least know what it is.
Right. Absolutely.
And also have some type of interaction with it. And so what we're starting to see, and when I say we, I mean like a group of technologists, because I work with a bunch of technologists around the world. And we've been having conversations around people upskilling themselves, like just kind of staying current with, what's happening. How can these tools affect how you work and how you meet people, how you buy things? You're going to start to see massive changes, and we've already seen it in the last year of just even people using the tool. And so that's why I think it's important, no matter what age you are, at least know what it is. Don't let it pass you by, and don't let fear stop you from exploring, because you sit on the sidelines long enough, you're gonna miss the boat. You're gonna miss the train, you're gonna miss the sports car, whatever analogy you want. But I think for the work that I do in making sure that marginalized and oppressed communities don't get left behind, is just really introducing them and just showing them different ways to use it.
Yeah. Now, for some, AI can be a scary thing.
Yeah.
I know even the government is stepping in, trying to govern the parameters, making sure it's not used incorrectly.
Yeah.
When you think about AI going into the wrong hands or people trying to use the cheat code. There was just a headline recently about how ChatGPT scored in 25 percentile on medical examination questions, including prescribing maybe 2 different medications that could potentially kill you and things like that. So when you talk about the dangers of AI and kind of governing AI, how do you feel about that?
I think that it's worth the conversation. I think that generally technology scares people who feel like they don't understand or they don't consider themselves. I hear this all the time. People say, well, I'm not a techie. Right?
Yeah.
And then they think that's going to automatically give them a pass from learning. It will not. And I'm going to keep coming for you and other people, right?
Yeah.
I think that, conversations around safeguards and making sure that we don't create things that are harmful to society and harmful to humanity are important conversations, right?
Sure.
I think the other part, though, is making sure that we all get involved in some way on some level because we have to influence it, right? And so again, an example of something that came out a couple of years ago. So for those of you who are Black Mirror fans, right? So Black Mirror is on Netflix. Several years ago, they had an episode where they had a robot dog. The robot dog was used as a part of military missions or whatever in that episode.
Right.
And so when they released it to the market, it was all this mass hysteria. And again, this was years ago.
Right.
And so it was so bad that people voiced their concerns of the fear and, the fact that they didn't like the technology, that it forced the company, I want to say it was Boston Dynamics is the company that makes it, to find other uses for this robot. And so you've seen stuff like the robot is now part of cheerleading squads. I saw a video recently on Instagram where a team in South Africa retrained it to dance to African drum beats. It was just crazy.
Right.
But I bring all that up because if we don't voice our concerns and we don't even know that the technology is there, you can't influence how it continues to be developed. Right. And so I think that's important. We got to know about these things. We got to raise our hand and say, hey, this is scary.
Yeah.
Beyond a reasonable expectation of scary. And so that we can really influence where the technology is going.
Yeah, and enforce the protections because, like you said, whether it's negative, positive, good or bad, it's moving fast.
Yes.
That you can't argue.
Yep.
Okay, it's moving fast. And, ChatGPT might be 25 percentile today and then up to 75% in a few months. And then it's moving fast, okay, whether you like it or not. But more about you. You were the project manager for USA Today's visual storytelling program. suite. And while there, you managed the Pulitzer Prize winning Metaverse product, The Wall VR,
Yes.
which won the Journalism 360 grant. So talk to us about The Wall.
Okay. So that project, that project was the highlight of my corporate career, right? Like when you think about, so I got to give you the background and the context of it. So this was around the time when Congress was voting on whether or not to fund the wall in the first place, right? And so the idea that USA Today had at that time was we need to put out a project that really educated people what the implication was, right? So a lot of times when you hear about the border wall, the narrative is quote unquote illegal immigrants jumping over a fence, right? And so it kind of dehumanizes the people involved. And so our goal was to really have this this bipartisan project where we told the whole story. So we told the story from border control, drugs, rape, unfortunately, eminent domain, endangered species, like literally every part of humanity and society that will be affected by a wall, or a wall being there and a wall not being there.
Yes.
And so we went from California all the way to Texas, like to the point where we actually had someone ride in a helicopter along the border to scan it. And we built a 3D model to scale so that when people went into the virtual reality experience, they were able to stand at the border where this wall would be. They would be able to see what was already there.
In VR.
In VR, right? And so this was back in 2017, right? And so we built something because we wanted to tell the whole story. We didn't build it with the intent of we want to win an award. Like, no, we want to tell the story. We want to show people what they're voting for when it comes to humanity. And so in putting that project out, I want to say it won the Pulitzer maybe like 8 or 9 months later, and we were surprised. Like, we were shocked. And it's the pinnacle of my corporate career because I learned so much about the journey of the people, right? And so, just being a Black woman and thinking about people leaving lands where they're trying to run away from persecution, they're looking for freedom, they're looking for economic opportunity. The idea that someone would leave their home and walk for not days, not weeks, but months. And we're not talking city streets, we're talking desert with wild animals themselves. So for anyone that makes it to the border, you really got to understand the journey. And so I feel like I'm getting emotional even talking about it because I think a lot of times the news leaves out that part of the journey. They just tell you, oh, they're just trying to get in here illegally. And it's just like, these people went through hell to get here. And then you even had people coming from South America. Imagine walking from South America through Central America to get to North America. Like, it's just crazy the amount of tenacity, resilience, grit, just ingenuity that you would have to have in order to make a trek like that for a better life. And so this project means so much for me, and it literally, I was already kind of like on this path of like technology for good, but it literally like stamped it. Like, there's ways to use technology, and that's why I'm not fearful of it. And when I hear these conversations and the counter arguments that people have for me, I'm willing to listen, but then also steer them in a way of like, let's turn your fear into curiosity. Let's turn your fear into inspiration. What can we do if it was designed to make people better, to make humanity better, to make your community better, to make you better? Would you now have a different view of this technology? In most cases, the answer is yes. So.
What's the real story of the border wall? More than 30 journalists spent a year investigating the idea of Trump's border wall. Experience what they found in virtual reality. See the entire border from above. Experience the untold stories of the wall in 4 chapters. Surround yourself with documentary videos and photos from the field. Experience the challenging terrain up close. And stand at the border itself. Wade across the river in a canyon in Big Bend National Park. Reach out to touch the border fence in California. Gaze up at a holy mountain outside El Paso. Should a wall be built? Don't just read about it. Go there.
a really poignant project because it touched on so many sides, and we're talking about this Texas, U.S. and Mexico border.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're talking about the journey of the people
Yeah.
that traveled all that way. The project touches on so many things, including eminent domain, which is a hugely controversial subject here in the U.S., basically where the government says, guess what? Hi, we like your private property, and we think that your private property would be for the greater good of the public versus your private property. So we're going to force you to sell it to us. You got cases like Keto versus New London, was it? That in 2005, that was such a major case that forced so many states to actually kind of change their laws in terms of eminent domain. And then some of those things have changed. Texas was one of those states. And then things have changed over the years. So when you talk about not only the journey of the people that traveled so far, but then the stories of the people here in the United States, because, of course, Americans care about what the Americans are going through, right?
Yeah.
Of course. And yeah, being forced off of their private properties and lands.
So there's 2 points I want to make about that. One is you're absolutely right, because I think in that, like in Black communities, we've always heard people talk about Black land being taken, right, eminent domain. But specifically in the border, there were farmers, like white farmers, who lost their land,
Yeah.
and they were pissed,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I don't think too many people really focused on that. But the
Yeah.
other thing too is, no matter where you fall on the decision of people coming to get citizenship here or not, or them doing it the legal way, there's physically, literally parts of the border where you cannot put a wall, right? Like, literally, you have state parks that are 14,000 feet in the air. There is like a Christ-like statue somewhere in Texas, I can't remember the town, that if they put a wall, it would go right through that land.
Yeah.
So religious land. So it's just like there's so many nuances to this that I think that were kept out of the media that most people didn't know. And it's just like, if you actually knew what we knew, you'd be like, okay, maybe I'm not so clear on how I feel about this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was a big project.
What caused you guys to land on this particular topic, the wall, eminent domain, and things of that sort?
So at that time, Congress was trying to figure out if they were going to vote, right, for it or against it. And so the idea was to put the project out to really inform people what they were voting for and what they were not voting for. And so it was, for us, we're, tech geeks, journalists at the time, we're just like, okay, we're going to put this out there and hopefully it makes an impact on Congress in some way.
Yeah.
It wound up making an even bigger impact with, winning a Pulitzer Prize for explanatory reporting. And so even when we put the experience inside of the app store or whatever, people downloaded it and they interacted with it. But I think it was one of those first types of interactions that kind of like this social commentary was mixed with VR, and then we
Yeah.
were off to the races because we were the only media company at the time that was doing anything like that.
Yeah.
So we had an internal team of game developers, and at the time, people thought we were crazy. It's like, why do y'all have a team of game developers inside of a media company? Well, that's how we were able to do something really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so, again, that was 2017.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that is so important. The game developers, even I play like VR games, done VR escape rooms and things like that. Listen, I've been hanging off of a wall and really felt like I'm hanging off this wall. I'm inside a cave. I'm hanging off a wall, and I'm scared to jump. And
Right.
it's not real.
Correct.
But it's about
feels-
how it makes you feel like you're there. And I think that's one of the more poignant
Yeah.
points of the whole thing, that you could actually get into the experience and feel like you're right there.
Correct. No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And I think that's the beauty of the technology, is transporting people to places that they can't readily get to, but they
Yeah.
still feel like they're there.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
remember when I first got started in this in the VR space, I was at a convention, trade show, or something like that, where I was viewing this man's product. And so the VR experience didn't have any words. It literally was like images and like music, right? Like a score to it. And so, but you could tell what the story was. So I'm watching it. I put on a headset, I'm watching it. And maybe like 2 to 3 minutes in, because it wasn't that long, I pulled out the headset and I was crying. And I said to him, I said, why didn't you tell me? And he goes, well, I couldn't. I wanted you to experience. What I essentially watched was what appeared to be a child in a neighborhood who seem to be homeless without without a family, without parents. And so while the lighting in the scene went down, it got darker, darker, and darker. And then somehow she found a blanket and like wrapped herself up. And then that was pretty much the end of the experience. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, as someone who's worked in a school district, as someone who has been in neighborhoods and, walked by tons of homeless people, like this was the last thing that I expected to see at this type of conference. But that is the power of technologies like VR. It's like you literally can put someone else, you can put someone somewhere else and get them to empathize, sympathize, whatever it is, either you had the experience or you haven't, to whatever is going on in the experience, and then you can walk away changed. And I always tell people about that experience because, again, no words, nothing on the screen, no one talking, but literally just movement and sound. And I was just like, this was just so extraordinary.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. You were just awarded Champion of the Metaverse at the Black Engineer of the Year Awards that happened this year, 2023. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. So, I know that it seems like you wear many hats, right? I mean, you've got like journalism, I believe business administration under your belt. You've worked in the school system. So how did your interest specifically in IT and tech begin?
Oh, man, this is a great story. It began when I was 10. Like, that's when I got my first computer. And so I think the really crazy thing is if you're around kids, just talk to them about stuff that maybe they don't know about, because that's how it happened. My 5th grade teacher, God bless Ms. Griffin, she told us around Christmas, actually, Christmas when I was 10 years old, hey, ask your parents for computers. And so this was at a time when most people didn't have computers in their homes.
Right.
I lived in a neighborhood where nobody in my neighborhood had internet at the time. Like, this was like dial-up. I don't want to age myself too much. But right, all of that, right? And so they got me a computer, and I didn't know what it was, but, she said to ask them, I asked them. And so my parents, because, they always want to try to give me everything, right? So I come from very humble beginnings, but they figured it out. And I had a computer under my Christmas tree. Little did they know that one gift literally would change the trajectory of my whole life, right? And so I began to learn how, to type on a computer. I learned how to code by high school. I went to Drexel, went for information systems, which is the cross between computer science and business. So that's literally how it started. Shout out to Ms. Griffin for just mentioning, I wasn't thinking about computers at 10.
Right.
But because she just made that one comment at this time of year when I was 10, it literally is the reason why I'm sitting in this chair today.
Shout out to Ms. Griffin.
Yes.
Tell me more about your parents.
Oh, my God. So my parents are amazing. So unfortunately, my father transitioned during the pandemic.
Okay.
But I would say that he single-handedly is probably the biggest influence on my life. So he used to be in the Navy. So if you know anyone or you growing up with a Navy or a military parent, they have a certain way of talking. They talk like sailors. We're going to say it like that, right? And so my dad has Gula Geechee roots from South Carolina.
Okay.
So all of that, if you can imagine what that sounds like and what that looks like, that was him.
Yeah.
Aries. Every time he walked in the room, he wasn't that tall of a man, but you knew he was there.
Big presence.
All day. 5'7", and you thought he was 6'10", right?
Okay.
So that was him. And then my mom was a homemaker, and so she just made sure that we were good. I look a lot like her, and I look a lot like her mother. And so between the two of them, they created a household where they really encourage us to learn, to be inspired, to be curious about the world around us. I was doing not typical stuff you would see in a North Philly neighborhood. So I'm originally from North Philly. So I lived in this poor, segregated neighborhood, but then I learned about theater. I learned about independent film. A part of my interest is in the arts. So that also comes into the tech stuff that I do, being a creative technologist. And so Sherry and Thomas are dope. Right? Just really, really amazing people. And so even with me getting here to Baltimore, they're part of the reason they helped me along my journey of this leg of my chapter. And I remember I was telling my mom and dad that I wanted to come to Baltimore. I wanted to start a business. I'll never forget the conversation I had with my dad. My dad was like, "You want to leave your good job?" Like, they always say that. "You want to leave your good job?" I
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, Dad, they trying to drive me crazy." So he was like, "All right, well, I know you got it figured out."
And where were you working at this time? What was this good job?
I think it was at USA Today,
Okay.
right? And so I had just realized that I gotten to a point of, you win a Pulitzer, then what's next, right? Like, so, okay, we can close this chapter and go on to the next thing. But my dad was really funny because he's like, "Leave the good job." I was like, "I got to do something else." But what was really cool about this chapter coming to Baltimore, when I told my mom I wanted to start a business, she was all for it. She's like, "Yeah, that's my baby. This is our business." Like, she still say it to this day, like, "How's our business doing?"
I love it.
But my dad wasn't immediately on the train, right?
Yeah.
So it took a little convincing, and I'll never forget the conversation. I want to share it, part of it, because I think this will be really helpful for anyone who's going through this with like a family member or a friend who
Sure.
might be a little skeptical of like whether or not they can do it. So my mom, like I said, was already on board. She already put her name on it. She already started helping me decorate, right? And so my dad was like, "Well, baby," he called me number one. He was like, "Number one, he's like, I believe in you, but like, what if you fail?" And I said, "Dad, I haven't yet." And he just looked at me. I don't think he was expecting that.
He was not ready for you, number
No,
one.
right.
Okay.
He wasn't. But I think like I needed them to do something for me to help me with the business, and that was the one conversation that helped push them over the edge. It's like, "You know what, we got you, and so just tell us what you need."
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we let doubt from friends and family kind of stop us from doing things.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, if you're convinced, you can convince them.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, you got to have something to stand on. Like,
Yeah.
So my dad has always kind of, I don't know. My dad was one of those people, like, he could tell me things about me that I was thinking before I told anyone else. So we just had that relationship. So when I had that conversation with him and I said what I said, I knew he knew I meant it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you had to be strong in that moment and stand in your truth, because for someone that knows you as well as your father, right? And this is someone who loves you.
Oh, yeah.
And wants the best for you. So this is not this isn't a hater, right?
Oh,
This
absolutely
isn't somebody that's trying to deter you from the best things that you can aspire for. This is someone who really, really has your best interest. So especially then, in those
Yeah.
times, it's kind of hard when you have your number one cheerleader that's like, "I don't know."
Yeah, I think a lot of times when it comes to older generations, right, like they have the formula to them is go to school, get good grades, get a good job. And if you can get a good government job, that's great too, right?
Yeah.
And so what he was starting to see, I guess, with me is kind of like this non-conventional way of being, right? And so it challenged everything that he learned. And that was the only time that he's ever given me pushback about anything. Like, I'll say, "Hey, I'm going to college to go do this." "Okay, yeah, go to college." He didn't understand my major. He didn't know what it was. But baby girl was going to college.
Right.
But start a business, I think for him, in his mind, it was scary. It was just like, I'm not sure how this is going to work out. Like, you had a good job that's paying you every 2 weeks. Like, how are you going to make this thing work? And so in coming to him with the confidence and a track record, and him seeing me and him instilling in me all the really great things about himself, he was just like, "Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I don't know how this is going to work out, but we going to be here." So it worked out.
Of all places in the country, why Baltimore?
You know what? Someone asked me that earlier, and so I'm not sure how religious your people's is, but God, literally, like, when I made the decision that I wanted to do this massive change for my life, like, I did a whole bunch of things all at once, like quit my job, sold my house, like, I was still trying to figure out where I was going for a good 6 months. Like, I lived with my family and my friends, up along the East Coast for like 6 or 7 months until I figured it out. But I knew at that point I needed a big change. I wanted to do something that I felt like really spoke to my talents, but also something that I felt like the world needed. And so that sounds so woo-woo or whatever to most people, but I really got to a point where it's just like, all right, I killed it in corporate already. Like, I did all the things. I don't really want to try to advance no more here. Where else can I take all this brilliance and this talent, but in a way that it just impacts people and impacts communities.
Yeah.
And so I actually thought I was going to Charlotte, North Carolina. Like if you had asked me, hands down, I was going to Charlotte. I was looking at places to live there. My sister's there. But at the same time, I was getting ready to leave. I met with an agent who did an open house on my house that I sold.
Okay.
And I was telling her my plan, and I'm not sure if I brought it up or she brought it up. She goes, "Well, have you thought about Baltimore?" And I was like, yeah. So when I was in Charlotte, she was looking at places here in Baltimore for me. So I'm in Charlotte looking at buildings. She's sending me a map, and I'm looking at them. And so I got to say this because this was really funny. Most people are like, "How'd you end up in Canton?" I was like, I don't know. I just picked something off a map. And so for people who don't know Baltimore, or I should say people from Baltimore and know Baltimore, probably were like, you are crazy. Like, you don't know if you would have gotten to a good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood.
Right.
What I did know about real estate at the time, because that's not even like a knowledge area for me. I know that any property around water is always going to appreciate. So that's what I found, a building that was near water, literally a block away. And I was like, I need to see that one.
Okay.
So when we got up here, and I came back from North Carolina to look at the building, me and my agent went in. We were like, okay, we love it. We gave it to the bank. They loved it.
Yeah.
We got the contractor to come. He loved it. I was like, all right, so I know something about real estate, even though I don't technically know. And so literally I remember, and this is another thing I think for anyone who's trying to manifest something or bring something to life or have faith in something, every time that I left kind of like DC or anything south of DC to go to Philly where my parents are, I would stop in Baltimore, stop at the building. I literally would walk around the building and rub my hand on the front door and then the back door. And like, God, I'm serious about this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna need you to I'm gonna need you to make this work. And so, it's crazy because, the type of building that I wanted to buy here, there wasn't like a normal bank product for it. So we had to go through all these different banks to see who could finance it or whatever. And I finally found one. And there's just a lot to the story, but I would just say that ultimately having faith and also just being consistent and diligent with the plan is how I got here, right? Like a lot of people would have gave up, with the trials and tribulations. Something as simple as our first bank wanted us to bring, I want to think somewhere between like 75,000 and like 100K to the deal. And so if you buy commercial properties here or anywhere, it's mostly 20%, right? So most people don't have that in cash. And I'm like, all right, can we do this? Can we not do this? And then it worked out that we wound up finding another bank that wanted us to bring significantly less money. And that was closer to closing. And so that's why I say God. Like, once I made the decision that, all right, God, I hear you. I'm coming to Baltimore. You want me to come to Baltimore. Everything just kind of worked out. It stressed me out, of course,
yes,
right? Like
of
along
course.
the way. But I think there's just something about faith. And when I don't want to get too religious here, but I'll wrap this up by saying, like, when you have a calling and you have purpose and you answer that call, everything you need will come. You may not know how it's going to come, but it's going to come. And that's literally what happened. So when people ask me how I got to Baltimore, my first reaction is God, and they start laughing. Then I try to break down, as much as the story or as little as the story as possible.
Right.
But I think people need to have faith.
Yeah.
They need to have faith in what you're being assigned and actually go do the thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Well, thank you.
I think you made the right decision.
Thank you very
Baltimore's
much.
a hub for so many reasons. You know what I mean? From location to so many things. So I think you made a good choice. So for Brick Rose Exchange, your company that you're the founder of, what do you see for the future of Brick Rose in tech?
This is the perfect question from where I just came from. So I just came from an open house with an organization that's doing vocational training here in the city. And they're working with individuals who may have backgrounds, right? But giving them job training so that they can go out and make decent legal money, right? And so what I see is this cross between leveraging technology, emerging technology, our passion and our mission around like social impact and tech for good to help improve, to help evolve, to help enhance programs like that, right? I feel like a lot of times when people think about technology in like communities, they want to teach kids how to code. we passed that.
Yeah.
Like, to be quite honest,
Yeah.
we're like really past that. And so now for me, it's around thinking and inspiring others to think and be curious and to use their imagination to how we can use these different technologies to do even greater things, to have even greater impact.
Yeah.
And so there was so much that we talked about at this vocational program. They're telling me about their program. They're telling me about their graduation rates and how long it takes people to graduate. And I'm just like, all right, we can use tech to speed this up. We can use tech to get more people graduated. We can use tech to help them, actually practice the skills and get to a level of mastery way faster than where they are.
Yeah.
And so that's what I see the future of the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
We touch on events, we touch on experiences, and we touch on programs, and really helping people evolve and also imagine what's possible with it. And so it's interesting because along the way, I have people come who want to just make a quick buck. And like when you meet people who aren't necessarily have the same values or on the same path as you, you're just like, okay, I can wait till you kind of fall off and you forget about this thing, or you move on to the next thing that's a quick buck for you. But like, I'm going to stay 10 toes down on this because this is what I believe in. This
Right.
is what I've been doing for the longest time. And like, the technology is changing. My mission hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like continuing to do that and finding ways to help Baltimore City evolve. What we're seeing from a technology perspective, and I was actually talking about this earlier today, is massive, massive change at a rate we've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is going to take collaboration. This is going to take public-private partnerships to bring technologists together with creative, with business people, with government, with whoever who want to solve some of these major social crises that we have in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't think it's going to be solved by just giving people computers and teaching them how to code. Like, we're almost at a point now where we almost got to inspire people to think.
Yeah.
Right? And also be brave enough to explore that creative idea that is just still sitting there in their brain and get it out their brain and bring it to life. Like, that's where we are right now. And so I get excited when I talk about this work. Like, I'm not sure if all this passion is coming up, but like, that's where we are as a society, but that's where we are as a city. We need to do something so transformational that when people hear it, they're like, yo, I didn't even think that was possible. Like, that's the impact that I want to have when I step in a room, when my partners step in a room, of like when we're talking about how to take things many evolutions and iterations up. Like, that's the impact that I want to have in spaces.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for Brick Rose Exchange, there's a huge community service aspect, community outreach, just wanting to solve problems, address crises.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily call it community service because I think a lot of times people discount that, right? This is about impact. Like, this is about
okay.
economic opportunity. This is
Okay.
about economic development. This is about workforce development, right? Nothing we do is charity. So I want you to understand that you're investing in communities. You're investing in people. You're investing with us. And so it's crazy because words have power, right? And so, the semantics of it is like, I want people to get off their butts. I wanted to say another word. And like, stop thinking about this as charity and community service. Like, you literally today can make the decision that if you're going to fund the thing that's going to change the trajectory of this whole lineage of people,
Yeah.
right? This whole community. Like, I want people to see, like, if you're a funder, look at, I'm invested in something that literally can change the way Baltimore City looks in the next 50 years to 100
Absolutely.
years. Like, don't just slide me a bag because you saw something on the news you felt bad. No, like, I want the people who are really committed to, like, what does this look like in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? Like, we want a Baltimore that, and not just a Baltimore, a world where people aren't looked at as charity. Like, as you're investing in them. You're investing in all of us, not just them, but because if they get up and we raise their tides, that raises what? They said the tides of all ships, right? And so that's where I'm at with this. I'm sorry. It's like it's like you about to take me to church.
Yeah, listen, this is what we want to know, exactly how you're thinking, your scope on things.
Yeah.
That's why you're here. So please talk to
Okay.
us. And the future, because like we mentioned, just in terms of technology, things
Yeah.
are changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Your take on the future of the metaverse?
I think it's the future of society.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not just the metaverse. Like we're already starting to see the merge of physical spaces and digital spaces, right? And so I just want people to know, like, it may seem so far in the future, but it's here now. A
Yeah.
lot of these technologies, believe it or not, are 50 to 70 years old.
Yeah.
The thing is that what we're starting to see is mass adoption and mainstream use of the technology. So it seems new to a lot of
Right,
people.
because it's just now starting to affect our communities and our
Correct.
everyday lives.
Correct. But you've been interacting with AI for the longest time.
Absolutely.
The simple example is Amazon when they start recommending stuff to you, right? So like that is a form of AI that most people probably don't even realize. AR when you're using the filters on your social media with the bunny ears and the card games and all that stuff, that's augmented reality. Like when you look at Sunday night football, Thursday night football, and they do the imaginary goal line on the screen, all that is the technology. You've been interacting with this stuff for a long time, and I think a lot of people don't know. And so my goal has always been, I like to describe it as being like a cultural tech translator. Like, how can we simplify these really almost kind of like scary, off-putting terms in a way that your average person, your grandma can understand this. Like, that's my goal with this. So I don't want people to shy away from this stuff because it seems so far and so foreign. It's not. It
Yeah.
really isn't. You just got to find the right people to help, kind of bring it down, not bring it down, simplify it, right? Simplify it in a way that it makes sense where you're just like, okay, I get it. Even kind of thinking about ChatGPT as a tool, I said this on like some type of speaking engagement last week where the idea of prompt engineering sounds scary to people. They're like, engineer, what do you mean? I don't even know what that means. It literally means give the AI instructions. Now, someone said that, you're like, oh, okay, cool. I can tell people what to do all day. But I think sometimes the labels that things are giving are, and I won't go too deep into this, are designed to keep certain communities out.
Yes.
Right? So my goal is to bring the communities back.
Right, and not be as intimidated.
Yeah, because there's no need to be intimidated. Like, if you're the person that, has the framework, the process, the procedure on how to do something, you can make a killing in AI right now, right? Specifically with that tool, through creating what they call GPTs, what are just like AI chatbots, right? So my goal is just to make it accessible in bigger terms, democratize, right? But make it accessible, easy to understand, where people feel like, okay, I got this. Like, I can start playing around with this. And so when you start playing around with it and you like, oh, I got something here, then you keep going. My sister, she laughs at me and she says, you always talking about ChatGPT, right? And so this was all year. And so yesterday she's like, I've been in here all day working with ChatGPT. So I hit her with like a GIF, was like, ah!
Yeah, like now you know.
Right. So excited. But I think that it's just exposure, then there's just curiosity, and then you move to a level of mastery. And now we working with something. When you talk about this tool that's only a year old, I remember the guy who runs our technology collective, he was telling me about it. He's like, yeah, you've been in prompt engineering. I'm like, what you talking about? And so in January, I started using this tool, and I got to a point where I've used it every day since. I'm at a certain level of mastery that many people can't mess with me, right?
Right.
But there's still more that I got to learn.
Yeah.
So, like, there's something new that drops. And I was telling a group of Black entrepreneurs in Philly last week that even as a technologist, even I need to keep up with new things that are coming out because I want to be able to teach and share with other people.
Even more so.
Yes,
Yeah.
even more so. It's like there's no good that happens if I keep everything to myself.
Sure.
Like, and a lot of the work and kind of like my ethos is around empowerment, right? Like, I never want to design anything, program, event, technology, whatever, where people are always going to need me. I'm going to design it in a way that you get empowered so you don't need me for that. Now, if we want to talk about something more advanced and complex, Let's have that conversation, but I don't want you to be stuck on this path forever. That doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do you any good.
Absolutely.
Especially if the technology changes again, where this is no longer even an option. So I want people, one, to be empowered, to have the curiosity, to be inspired, but to then continue to build themselves. Because at the end of the day, I have no desire to be anybody's savior. I want you to save yourself. Like, I'm about a liberation, right? And so I want people to move with that energy, to have that, and that's what I have around me. So I'm just excited to be here talking about it, because hopefully, and someone listening to this, it pushes them to go explore the tool. It pushes them to force the committee to have the conversation about these emerging technology. It forces somebody to start that business that maybe they've been kind of putting off to the side because they didn't have the resources. Like, you got AI now. It can tell you how to do a lot of things, and it can go find some stuff for you that otherwise would have probably took you months and weeks at a time to do.
Absolutely.
So I just want people to be empowered and want them to liberate themselves.
Yeah. Get with the program.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, you're so young. You've done so much. You're still passionate.
Oh, thanks.
So passionate about what you're doing. So I know you're religious. So I know folks say, like, there's no plan greater than God's plan, or you want to make God laugh, try to say what your plan is going to be. But what do you, in your mind, when you think about your plans and your aspirations, see in the future for Bianca J. Jackson?
Well, that's a great question. So I wouldn't even necessarily say I'm religious. I would probably say I'm more spiritual at this point. But what I see, and I actually was thinking about this last night, so great question. For me, it looks like more travel. A lot of my work is somehow not shaping up, I guess, on purpose, right? Pun intended. Around liberating, or I shouldn't say liberating, put people in positions where they can liberate themselves through technology, right? And so I work with a couple of different organizations, and one project is working with Black nations around the world. And so I just literally came back from the Bahamas, and we started to have conversations around what does innovation look like in a Black nation like that, right? And so really thinking about, again, and it's not just Black people, it's, for me, is marginalized and oppressed people around the world of like, all right, you may not have all the money that you deserve, right? You may not have all the resources you deserve, but how can you use these low-tech tools to get you even farther than what you've ever thought possible? And that is my mission. So being able to still travel, not just the U.S., but literally around the world, and help people who help these communities help themselves, because that's always important to me. We gotta do things where people can help themselves to be empowered to do something, to really figure out how to solve their own problems. Like, I don't want to be a savior for anybody. I'm no one's leader. Let's be very clear. I'm my own leader, right?
Okay.
But I want to inspire people to be their own leaders, to liberate themselves through whatever tools that are possible, to start creating for themselves and not wait on others to give you something. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bianca, I just really appreciate you stopping by, sharing your story, dropping so much knowledge. It's much needed. And for people that are interested in learning more about you, that want to learn more about the Brick Rose Exchange and just how to get involved and move forward, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
I would say through our website. So brickroseexchange.org. So brick on the wall, rose like a flower, exchange, straight contact form. Actually, it's not even a contact form. You can jump right on my calendar. You got to enter some information, though, right?
Okay.
We're not going to just chop it up. But if you want to just follow me, I would say LinkedIn. I post there, and possibly Instagram is my name, Bianca J. Jackson. I'm going to check out your profile first.
Okay. I might not know you
right,
like that.
I might not know you like that. But also, the thing about that, though, is, like, I feel like my work is spiritual. And so, and having people follow you, you want people following you with the right intentions. So that's why I'm saying, like, you may get in, you may not.
It's about the vibe.
Yeah, it's about the vibe.
What are you putting forth? What's that energy saying?
Exactly.
Right.
So you can follow me all day on LinkedIn. There's like 40-something thousand people who follow me there. But for Instagram, we got to do a vibe check first.
Okay. All right. I like that. Well, Bianca J. Jackson, keep doing what you're doing. Keep traveling. Keep inspiring. Keep teching.
I like that. Keep teching.
Keep teching, okay?
Yes.
All right. Wait, trademark, copyright, what? Get the T-shirt. But yes, keep doing what you're doing, man. We appreciate you coming by and just sharing your story for sure.
No, I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to chopping it up with you again. And thank you for joining us for the To Be More podcast. If you missed any episodes or you want to watch full episodes, just log on WMAR2news.com. I'm Erica Kane. Thanks for joining us.